Hopefully you're already aware of Laurie McKenna through a video I did quite some time back in the Undiscovered Gems series. A very, very early video in that series. It's a series that I need to revive actually. It's one that I always say I need to keep going back to, but then I end up, focusing on other things, perhaps over the summer now that I've got a little bit more time and should hopefully be a bit more active with videos. I could probably bring back that series in some capacity because I really do enjoy doing those videos, and if you've never watched any of them, please give them a watch because there's so much music I've been pouring love into that deserves way more hype than it gets. And Laurie McKenna with The Bird and the Rifle is certainly an album that deserves that kind of accolade because it is so bloody good, and yet it's very rare you see people bring her up as an artist. Aside from like my boy Spectrum Pulse, who's out here always touching on country music, you've got to respect the grind that he goes through with the country recommendations, but other than that it's pretty dry out here, and Laurie McKenna should be a much bigger country name than she is, especially when you're looking at like the mainstream charts. I mean, country is thriving right now. Friggin' Morgan Wallen's been at the top of the charts for ages, and it's insane to think that that song has been as big as it is. Not that I hate it or not that I think it's awful or anything. I just don't particularly think it's that good or interesting enough to be at the top of the charts for that long. And then you've got that friggin' Jason Aldean song as well, man. What the hell's going on? There's so much country getting to the top of the charts. They're like the Billboard mainstream US charts. It's not the country charts. These are the official charts. And yet names like Laurie McKenna just are way down in the pecking order. It's insane. I was probably gonna skip this album actually in terms of doing a review because the last couple of albums I've thought were okay from Laurie, not been up to her best standards in my opinion. I know other hardcore Laurie fans have loved those albums, but for me, they've just been decent. However, I've got to say, this new one is bringing it back. It made me change my mind completely on doing a review, and she is at the best of her abilities once again. The peak of her powers are back in her grasp, and she's putting out some of her best music once again, in my opinion. This album is great, and it's nice to be giving out so many positive album reviews lately because the last like 3 or 4 in a row now have been super positive, and it's great to have this on the channel, especially since I've just done the best albums of the year so far video, and since then I've been like thrown loads of new great albums that probably could have been mentioned in that very video. But seriously, Laurie is back again with giving us really, really wisdomful, insightful, motherly lyrics that are just so warm and heartwarming and always from a good place. Her intentions are always so good, and you can only trust everything she says, as she just seems to be like the smartest person in the room when it comes to like giving advice or looking at life from a perspective that offers something really interesting. I mean, that motherly, caring nature comes through in spades on some of these tracks, especially looking at a song like Happy Children, which, yeah, sure, some of the observations are pretty general. Some of the things she says do feel actually quite cliche for her own standards, but for every one line you get that's a bit like that, you do get the next one that's actually really like, oh, actually I didn't think of it like that. So she's always bringing something interesting to the table, and this just really sweet sentiment of like wishing on someone well and hoping that they have happy children. I don't know, there's just something about that is kind of adult contemporary as it sounds in terms of the lyrics, as general as it sounds, as maybe as mumcore as it sounds. I just think the way she's saying it and everything about how she delivers it is just so bloody lovely that I can't not like this. Looking at some other tracks as well that might be a bit lyrically weaker, like Days of Honey, kind of make up for the fact that the melodies and the rustic and really earthly sound to the tracks really bring the tracks to life, and the production value of this album honestly sells these tracks to such a high level that even at times I do think some of her writing isn't at her best. I'm not too fussed because the tracks just sound as good as they do. Killing Me actually has a bit more of like a rock leaning sound to it, which is quite upbeat and up-tempo for a Laurie McKenna track. Really sells it though. Lyrically, this track is really good as well. This idea of her trying to like keeping everyone together and having all the pressure mounting up on her and trying to always keep people happy is not an easy task. And I think having that insane amount of responsibility must be ridiculously hard. As someone who is not a father or anything like that. Could only imagine what that will be like if I ever get to that point. And you can just tell this track is just kind of her collapsing in on herself, getting bloody sick of these people who are glass half empty all the time. Why can't you just be bloody happy? I'm trying to keep you happy, and it's killing me trying to do that and see you not be happy, and that's also killing me. It's just a stress ball all kind of exploding all out at once. But it's a really interesting perspective. I like this angle that she's coming at this song from. An excellent 2-track Pete on this album though. Some of her best songs in my opinion come through 1988 and Growing Up. Really, in terms of how these 2 tracks sound, they are excellent. Really, really strong, memorable choruses. Honestly, if you're not even that big of like a country fan, which I know some people who watch my videos aren't really that fussed, I would recommend listening to tracks like these, because honestly I think you'd be interested in the way that they sound, because they are melodically pleasing on the ears. And also lyrically, 1988, you know, this sort of nostalgia for a previous time, the old house that you might have lived in, and the way she words it as well in such a sentimental way of like, I've been a fan of you since 1988, as if you're discussing this sort of abstract concept, as if you're talking about like listening to friggin', I don't know, De La Soul or some random band from the 80s like Grateful Dead or something, or any other old band. And it's like, no, I was there from the start. Actually, I like the way that she words that in this song. There were probably 2 better examples that I could have listed there as musical references, which is very out of character for me. But anyway, you get the point of what I was trying to say. But Growing Up though, this might be the track of the album. This was the one track I listened to just a sample before listening to the whole thing. And yeah, I am really, really impressed with this one. This is a great track. I really like the twinkly melody that comes through as well on this track. And really the narrative is just excellent. You know, this idea of like not really knowing where life was going to take you. You never really thought you'd be at a point where, you know, you've spent so much years of being addicted to drugs and then you're sober, but then by the time you get to sober, your mum's really ill, and then you're looking after your mum, taking meds for your mum, and things just really coming to a point where you just never really had a sort of like vision for. You didn't see a life going in this direction. And it's like a really like grounding song about growing up. Like growing up actually could be something really exciting, but in reality, growing up has so much sadness and so much heartbreak that comes along with it. And yeah, I think the way she words all of this is so bloody good on the track. No one actually hits a point where, you know, they tell you how tough it's really going to get, or if they do, they don't quite elaborate on how tricky things will become. And yeah, I just think this track is really, really poignant and delivered so well, and as sad as it is, but that's the thing with Laurie, she just doesn't mince words and she touches on things in such a realistic way, and her lyrics and her insight is just so powerful as well. But yeah, you've got tracks like The Town in Your Heart, which is just kind of an ode to your hometown, which sounds probably a bit corny just on the surface, but trust me when I say these tracks are really, really well produced and well sung and well performed and are melodically pleasing, as I keep using that term. And Letting People Down, which I saw on her Instagram story, she like screenshotted this a few times, that it keeps making its way into like different playlists and stuff, which is really good to see. So hopefully this is a song that catches her a bit of traction, or a bit more traction than she was already getting, because that would be great to see. But yeah, this track again is just really, really lovely in the way that it's presented. I mean, she's very regretful and accepts that she keeps letting people down, but the intentions are always good and she doesn't mean to be doing it, and she hates the fact that she keeps doing it. And it's almost like looking at that, reflecting on yourself and how you can be better in that sense. A very sort of Jason Isbell type way to look at a song, like the way he kind of just tears himself up from the outside in and just kind of outlines and puts all of his flaws on the table and just kind of goes, right, this is you, let's talk about you, let's talk about you, let's talk about you. Laurie McKenna does that in a good way too. And yeah, really, really strong stuff across the board on this album. I think for the fact that the music is just more awe-inspiring on this album than the last couple, a bit more livelier as well in places. Dave Cobb, I think, is on production as well. It just really kills a rustic and earthly feel to these tracks. It's great. I really like it. It is a very sweet sounding album with some really heartbreaking and poignant lyrical topics. It's one of the best singer-songwriter albums of this year. And for however many times in a row I've said this on this channel, 8 out of 10, another 8 out of 10 review from me. And let's hope there are many, many more to come. And let's hope you check out this album based on my recommendation here. If you have already heard it though, please tell me in the comments what you think and tell me what I should be reviewing next. Have some ideas on the way, so please stick around for those. Subscribe, check out my Patreon as well. Have a good day and goodbye.